Hello everyone, it's Scott and we're back for day 2 of Bloomburrow spoiler season, and we've got a lot of interesting cards to talk about today. But before we get into those, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Bloomburrow spoiler season. So let's dive into Bloomburrow spoilers. Our first card of the day is Sunspine Lynx for 2 and 2 red mana. You get an Emerald Cat, that's a 5/4, and is our Calamity Beast for the day that we're going to be able to look at. Now, also with it, players cannot gain life, damage cannot be prevented, and when Sunspine Lynx enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each player equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls, which I think is a powerful ability in Standard. The fact that your opponent cannot gain life, damage can't be prevented, and also the fact that when it enters play, it's going to do damage to your opponent and potentially not any damage if at all to you, because this to me is a card that fits right into a mono red shell where you're going to play this and you're probably not going to be playing many, if any, non-basic lands in your deck. And because of that, I think it's a great card in Standard. Next, we've got Zoraline, Cosmos Caller. For 1, a white and a black mana, you get a Bat Cleric. That's a legendary creature. It's a 3/3 with flying and vigilance. Whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. And whenever Zoraline enters or attacks, you may pay a black and a white mana and 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So Zoraline to me is a really powerful card that I think any deck that's playing Orzhov colors is going to want to have, because that ability to reanimate any of your 3-cost or less creatures for 2 mana and 2 life is a pretty powerful ability in Standard and even in some other formats. So I think there's maybe some playability beyond Standard as well, but I think this is a card that I will expect we'll see some Standard play. Next, we have Iridescent Vinelasher. For a black mana, you get a Lizard Assassin. That's a 1/2. It has Offspring 2 and Landfall. Its Offspring 2 ability means you may pay an additional 2 as you cast the spell. If you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. And its Landfall ability is when a land you control enters the battlefield, this creature deals 1 damage to target opponent. So the ability to do damage just by playing land is a powerful ability in Standard. So you play this on turn 1, and then for the rest of the game, as long as Iridescent Vinelasher is on the field, every time you play a land, you're doing a little bit of damage to your opponent. And I think that's a powerful ability not only in Standard, but I think it has some possible usage in other formats as well. Next, I've got Manifold Mouse. For a colorless and a red mana, you get a Mouse Soldier. It's a 1/2, and it also has Offspring 2, and you may pay an additional 2 as you cast the spell. If you do, when this creature enters, create a 1/1 token copy of it. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target mouse you control of your choice gains double strike or trample until the end of the turn. So really powerful ability that triggers the beginning of combat. And the nice thing here is you don't actually have to attack with Manifold Mouse to get the ability. So I could see Manifold Mouse being in a deck where we want to be able to either provide trample to a creature so that damage gets through, or we want to get that double strike ability in, so that way we're doing additional damage each turn to hopefully quickly wipe out an opponent. So I think this is somewhat playable in Standard. Next, we've got some lower rarity cards that I want to talk about. First is Bright Blade Stout. For 1 and a white mana, you get a Weasel Soldier. That's a 2/2. It has First Strike and Lifelink. So pretty generic in its abilities, but because it's a soldier, I think this is definitely something that the soldiers deck will want to consider moving forward. Having First Strike, having Lifelink are abilities that we're losing with Thalia, because she was really the only first striker in the deck. So I think that first strike ability just on its own, and then that ability to gain life, I think makes this playable in soldier builds. Next, we've got Mabel's Melee. For 1 and a white mana, you get an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn, and up to one other target creature gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. So I think if there is a deck that is going to use Slick Shot Show Off and it's going to be a Boros deck, I think this would be a card that deck may want to consider playing in Standard. Definitely in a limited situation, it's a very good card.
Next, we've got Brazen Collector. For 1 and a red mana, you get a Raccoon Rogue. That's a 2/1 with first strike, and whenever Brazen Collector attacks, add 1 red mana to your mana pool. Until end of turn, you don't lose that mana as steps and phases add. So I like the ability, you attack, you get mana, and that allows you to potentially do combat tricks or cast larger spells on your second main phase. So I think this is a card that in Raccoon decks will want, and possibly some other decks in Standard. Next, we've got Consumed by Greed. For 1 and 2 black mana, you get an instant, and it's gift a card. You may promise an opponent a gift as you cast the spell. If you do, they draw a card before its other effects. Target opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. If the gift was promised, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is one where it's simply a removal spell on its surface, but then you also get that ability to bring something back from your graveyard if you allow your opponent to draw a card. And I think that makes it somewhat playable in Standard. Next, we've got Heartfire Hero. For a red mana, you get a Mouse Soldier. That's a 1/1. It has Valiant. Whenever Heartfire Hero becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. When Heartfelt Hero dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So really interesting card here in my mind. The Valiant ability, I think, makes this playable in Standard. We know in the mono red deck we're going to be looking for replacements for those things that are going to be rotating. And for a 1 mana creature, this is a pretty good creature because you're going to be able to build it as you go, because it has, in essence, a prowess ability built into it. So when you target it, it's going to get that prowess trigger and get that +1/+1 counter. So I think there's some Standard playability with this one. Certainly a card I would want to play in Limited. Next, we've got Quake Tusk Boar. For 3 and 2 red mana, you get an Elemental Boar. That's a 5/5. It has Reach, Trample, and Haste. Great card in Limited, probably not Standard playable. Next, we've got Bramble Guard Veteran. For 1 and 2 green mana, you get a Raccoon Warrior. That's a 3/4. And when you expend 4 raccoon you control, get +1/+1 and gain Vigilance until end of turn. So nice triggered ability. Another one of those, hey, if we're playing a Raccoon tribal deck, this is a card that synergizes well with it because you're likely expending 4 on many of your turns in that kind of deck. So I think this is a card that fits in there. Not sure if it fits in anywhere else in Standard. Galewind Moose is our last card of the day. And for 4 and 2 green mana, you get an Elemental Elf. That's a 6/6. It has Flash, Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. So again, another card probably not Standard playable because of the 6 mana cost. But in Limited, this is a really valuable card to have in your Limited deck. All right, those are our cards for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be back tomorrow with day 3 of Bloomburrow spoiler season. Thanks for staying to the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this throughout Bloomburrow spoiler season, and I will see you in the next video.